Hello again. We're talking about classical Kriya Yoga today. Just think, this information is thousands of years old, as best we can tell. And it's so beautiful. Classical Kriya Yoga has 3 steps, or 3 parts. And they are self-discipline, self-study, and Ishvara Pranidham. That means seeing God in others, or surrendering to God so that you can see God in others. When yogis meet, we do this. This means my soul bows to your soul. And that's what this step of Kriya is all about. Recognizing spirit in others and yourself. Recognizing essence. So it's wonderful to practice Kriya Yoga, and it's time we looked into Kriya more deeply. So, that said, I love the passage of a Kriya yogi named Roy Eugene Davis in his commentary on Patanjali's great book. It was a bunch of thread ideas that became a book, meaning the Yoga Sutras, the thread ideas of yoga. And it's in a book, and you can buy one and have a beautiful, profound understanding of yoga in your pocket. Because there are little tiny ones too, but certainly in your library. So that said, I'd like to quote Mr. Davis, a brother in yoga. He said this, it's a profound quotation. Kriya Yoga is practiced for the purpose of weakening and neutralizing the subtle, restricting influences of the mind. Your mind keeps you ignorant. We're trying to free ourselves of those subtle, restricting or limiting influences of our mind that keep us from knowing spirit and living in spirit and being attuned with spirit throughout the day. Rather profound. It's just so good. I'd like to say it again. Kriya Yoga is practiced for the purpose of weakening and neutralizing the subtle restricting influences of the mind. So, you know what you're doing. You're keeping your mind from holding you prisoner, holding you ignorant. And there are obvious restless activities we have which keep us in the mind and keep our mind limited. For example, you may just have too many sensations going on. You just hear all kinds of things happening out there. Even in the woods, the creatures are busy all the time. You think the woods are quiet? They're rustling. People are moving and living and flying and running all the time. That was surprising. I spent 5 months in solitude in 1969 and had a wonderful time in the woods outside a Nanda meditation retreat in the area of Grass Valley in California. And first day, I noticed there's so much noise here because the creatures are busy, but it becomes a very mellow noise. And so I practiced my yoga and had a wonderful time. But even friends who would come and visit me during my solitude, they would bring even more activity to nature. And very often they couldn't meditate because nature was so busy that particular day that they were there. Fascinating, isn't it? So, we have sensations keeping our mind busy. What's that? What's that? Or we're thinking about memories and thoughts relating to the sensation. First the sensation, and then thoughts brought on by that, and we're still stuck in our mind. So, I might mention that there is a beautiful, great yogi named Paramahansa Yogananda. His autobiography is an essential read, and he brought a particular initiation and practice called Kriya Yoga. I'm talking here about the classical Kriya from ancient day through the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali to us today. I'm not talking about that initiated private technique, to clarify things. We have deep-seated impressions which are brought about by our sensations. We hear a car go by, we think about the Chevrolet we used to have. Or we think about being a kid playing with little toy cars, perhaps. All kinds of related thoughts and memories come. And once again, we're stuck in the mind. We're not able to experience our essence, our soul, and the spirit within us. We get restricted. Our efforts to focus the mind become futile quite often. And that's why we practice yoga, because at first we're too busy mentally to allow ourselves to experience the soul within us and spirit everywhere. And so these influences that keep us from experiencing soul and spirit are called the 5 afflictions, because we are afflicted. We are being limited and hurt by these particular maladies. The first of which, and I'm going to go through them, and when you meditate deeply and you have peace or love or joy occurring, you've experienced what it is to go beyond the mind into higher levels of consciousness. But these restrictions or afflictions stand in the way every day until we get more advanced and more blessed in our meditation and yoga practice. So, first one, main one, ignorance or lack of understanding causes all the other problems. That's a profound statement, isn't it? Ignorance, lack of understanding causes all other problems. It's nice when you have a problem to think, what am I ignorant about here? What don't I know? Is a very helpful understanding. Admitting we're ignorant and our ignorance is in the way, and that it causes all the other problems that keep us from knowing spirit and soul. So if you'd like right now, think of an area that you have where you are ignorant or lack understanding. Do you know your soul? Do you know the soul in other people? Do you sense their spiritual essence? Do you know why you're here? What your life's about? Do you know why you irritate people or cause them to be in conflict with you? What's your part in that? Do you know why you're unhappy if you're unhappy? Do you know why you're worried? Do you know what's going on that causes you unrest of the mind and heart? So ignorance is the main one. And it's wonderful, I think, to just pause and think, what am I ignoring? What am I ignorant about? So just take a moment, turn me off, and consider, what is afflicting my life in the form of ignorance? Go ahead. A little reflection is always helpful. Welcome back. Let's see what more we can get into to help us out of our mental prison. And here is a fundamental point from these ancient people who turned out to be so wise. They were called rishis, wise men and women who learned these things by focusing on God and spirit, and develop yoga. Here we go. As you know from ignorance, or as you may not know, but if you're ignorant, you are also ignorant of who you are. Who am I? So ignorance causes our I sense, our ego sense. And our ego is a product of ignorance. So not in every case. Depending on interpretations in metaphysics, for example, in mysticism, your I sense can be a reference to your soul, to your enlightened soul. So depending on, defined terms, always defined terms. But our I sense usually is completely unaware of being spirit, of love, of joy, of the presence of God, of the presence of God in other people as well. So from ignorance comes our I sense, our sense of who we are. And so our ego very often is heavy and strong and won't let us meditate, won't let us transcend. So we have a heavy, unchanging sense of who we are. And this is not a happy sense. This is a concrete, unyielding sense of self. And it's too bad, because it's keeping us in our state of ignorance and in our state of separateness from everybody else and from God. So I'd like you to try, can you locate your sense of self? You could chant I, or I, me, mine, because very often you just think I, or I, me, mine, and you'll find you can directly experience your ego and what state it's in. Is it worried? Is it trying to dominate? Usually ego tries to dominate, tries to survive, but also dominate. If you're under threat by bills or bullies, the ego is very easy to feel. Well, I know and I feel, and I'm stuck. I'm stuck. So I'd like you to see if you can locate this sense of self that you live with. When you refer to I, and you say me and mine, what are you referring to? Who are you referring to? Let's take a moment, turn me off, and strive to sense who we're referring to when we say I, me, and mine. Go ahead. Reflect a moment or two. Reflect during the day, but start it now. Who am I? Who am I? Are we ready for the next one? So we've got two big problems, or big bully factors, which keep us stuck in the mind and keep us ignorant and lost in terms of who we really are. Ignorance leads to this harsh, separative ego. All right, so we've got ignorance going, and we've got a false sense of self going, which leads to the ego has his wants and needs and is trying to rule our life, and we think it's really us. So we become attached. Our ego wants things. Well, of course, it needs food and shelter, but along with that, it wants all kinds of things. So we find our ego, this ignorant ego, is very craving and clinging. It has wants and needs, and it also, in comparing itself with others, may have conflicting needs and wants. It may find warfare or competition that becomes unfair in relating to other people. So, do you have cravings and clingings? These are called attachment. And from ignorance comes ego. From ego comes this aspect of wanting, craving, clinging, holding on to what you got, being nervous about what you've got, and also wanting to extend and have more in various ways. Some of them ridiculous, of course, if we would think about it, but very often we think we have very important reasons that we need that particular situation or reputation or item. So do you sense the ignorance, the ego, and what the ego has been wanting lately? What are some of the themes of ego in terms of its clinging and craving through your life? All the things you've wanted a lot and thought about a lot and yearned for, or were, what should we say, craving every day in order to be happy. And you weren't happy because you were busy craving. Anyway, it's time to take a look. Can you identify your attachments that come from ignorance and ego? I'm not saying you can do this right away. Probably you can. But just work on this, trying to understand this as the days go by. And you'll have such a clearer understanding of life and what your life and you are about. Let's take a minute, or 3 or 5 or 10 or 20. Can you identify your attachments? Please proceed. There are all kinds of stories, moving on, about yogis who wanted things when they were kids, and now that they're grown-ups, they get those things, but they don't want them anymore. I know of one master who wanted a horse when he was a kid. And when he became an adult, when he had no place for a horse or no need of a horse, he was given a horse. Moving on. We have things we want, things we crave, but we also have aversions and a sense of repulsion. We don't want certain situations. Our ego won't allow that, or tries to avoid. What? What do we feel aversion for? I don't want that to happen, or I don't want to have that person or thing or situation. What are the aversions and repulsions that we carry to this day? Perhaps they were trained in us. Prejudice, for example, or attitudes which were pretty limiting. So we've got attachments going from our ego and ignorance, and we've got perhaps some serious social problems or relationship problems because of this feeling of aversion that we bring into daily situations and daily relationships and daily views of life, views of other people. Can you identify what you don't want, what you have a repulsion for? I don't want that. Don't make me go through that. Or I don't like those people. Or I don't like those things to happen in my life. I don't want to live in that section. I don't want to work in that department. I don't want to associate with those people. It's happening. So from ignorance comes ego, comes attachment, yes, but also aversion and repulsion. And it's important to notice if we are carrying any aversions and repulsions with us. Do we have any? If we have phrases like those people or that part of town, we've got some aversions going. So take a moment, consider, do you have or have you recently experienced aversion and repulsion? Are you ready to move on? Ignorance goes a long way, doesn't it? And it hurts the world so bad. We can't be happy. And we hurt others in our blindness, in our ignorance. Okay, so ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion. There is an inner will we have to live, but it often involves dominating or prevailing over others. We want to live. We want what's coming to us. We want to be the best. We want to have the ideal life and are not that concerned about other people having an ideal life. We have an inner will to live, which could be good in many ways because it'll help us preserve ourselves. But at the same time, very often it's a drive to prevail over others, or even over the deity, even over the divine. Our ego wants to prevail over spirit and spirit's realities. So let's consider, do we have an inner will or a pressure from within where we want to prevail? We want to dominate. Consider this. In what ways, regarding what situations am I trying to naturally, kind of automatically trying to prevail and dominate? Take a look. Well, there's another thing that happens to us when we're in mind prison or purgatory, whatever. We have an outer urge now and then. Life's too hard, we think, or life's too meaningless. We would rather not go through all the effort and disappointment of life. So we have an outer urge regarding life not to be there. In other words, to die or to become unconscious, spend our days sleeping. This outer urge to not participate, not enjoy life, because you've already tried that. And you find life futile, meaningless. Let's take a look. So from ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, inner will to dominate, and an outer urge to become unconscious or not participate in life. Let's look at that fifth one, the outer urge to not participate, to die, yes, or to become unconscious, or to avoid life. Do we have that? Most people do. Check and see where you are on this one. The urge to die or become unconscious, to not participate. There. We've made a good survey. And when you're troubled, it's good to do this survey. Excuse me. What am I ignoring? What sense of self have I got going? Is it attachment that's bothering me, or aversion? Is it a desire to prevail and dominate, or to not participate in life, a drive to vanish, or not hurt anymore? Consider again and again, when you're unhappy or suffering or beset by problems, just go down this process you've just done. Very often you'll get insight. You're practicing yoga. You're doing Kriya yoga. So, repeating this main theme, lack of understanding, ignorance of our spiritual nature is the cause of all other restricting influences. Being unconscious of spirit, that which is true about life, gives rise to that set of problems. Egoism, attachment, aversion, and etc. I've said it sufficiently, I think. When these restricting influences are fully active in our mind, our reason is overpowered. When these restricting influences are fully active in our mind, Mr. Davis says, our reason is overpowered, so we're not very good at thinking and choosing and deciding, and we're often self-destructive. Can you remember such a time when your reason was poor, shoddy, self-destructive? All right, take as much time as you wish. I'm moving on here. These obstacles which keep us ignorant, which maintain the ignorance, can also be hidden within us. And when we have some situation come up in our life, suddenly this dormant problem just rises to the scene and we wonder where it came from, because we were carrying it around with us. So you could look now and then to what rises to the scene, like when I'm sad or when something doesn't work out right. What comes up? Chances are it's one of these. So take a look within at your leisure. Consider, not only do I have an active ignorance going here, but I also have a whole, what should we say, treasure chest of things that rise to the scene unexpectedly and add to my misery and my ignorance. Are you ready to move on? Just remember, they can be dormant and they can come up and bother you a lot and make you make a terrible decision, terrible choice. We also have, in addition to these afflictions, we have levels of the afflictions. They can be strong, they can be weak, just always bothering us a little bit. Or they can be strong and overpower us whenever they please, unless we say, no, I'm seeking truth. I'm seeking spirit. I'm seeking the reality. I'm seeking the cause of life and the point of life. So emotional unrest can trigger them. Indecision can trigger them. Lack of ability to concentrate triggers them. It's just fascinating how we're put together and how we can be so ignorant. You may have alternating influences also. You may have very clear times after a good meditation, for example, and you may have some pressure that gets you into a bad place. Remember, you're learning yoga. Yoga is not instantaneously effective. It is something that you develop in. Sometimes these obstacles are easy to overcome. We just have a clarity and an understanding and just send them away. Sometimes they're hard to overcome. And we wonder, why is this so hard? Well, go back to, what am I ignorant about here? What am I missing? Oh, I see, I'm not myself today, really. This is not who I am. I'm behaving like a cad. Someday you may feel inclined to moods or purposeless behavior. Moods, emotional momentums. But you can notice consciously, gee, I'm feeling like being pessimistic and argumentative. But you can notice this tendency is going on within me and decide I'm going to be cheerful and well-organized and goal-oriented today, and I'm going to be nice to people today. You can notice these and work with them because you're practicing Kriya Yoga. But with yoga development, all these obvious and subtle tendencies can be overcome and cleared out of your system. So that's something very wonderful about yoga. It helps us as we practice self-discipline, self-study, and seeing God or spirit in others, including ourselves, including when we look in a mirror. Just look in there. Appreciate that life and consciousness that is before the mirror. Weaken and neutralize the restricting influences of your mind. Release restless activities, sensations, attachment, craving, aversion, repulsion, I should say. The inner will to win and prevail and dominate. Plus, also we have the urge occasionally to die, to sleep, to escape, to quit, or to become unconscious. You are here, you're a true devotee. If you deal with life as an opportunity for self-discipline, self-study, and seeing God in others, your mind will not prevail. Your mind will not block you and keep you ignorant. You will thrive. You will know the joy and the pleasure of practicing Kriya Yoga.